Literal, then loose translation. Behold, how... Exactly. What's his or her name? Sula? Hi, Sula. Hi. How are you? Yes, that's right. We got it good. We're in it together, Sula, me and you. If you need to scream, just scream. It's all good. If I do, I will. Exactly. Right? So here we go. Hinema, behold, it is tov. It is good. And umanaim, and how sweet, pleasant. Shevet achim. When sit together, achim, literally brothers or brothers and sisters, or if you're a fan of Kinky Boots, for those who've yet to decide. Right? How good and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters and those who've yet to decide sit together in unity. In unity. I've got two very glide stories for you this morning about what happens when achim, brothers and sisters from different and sometimes radically different backgrounds, come together to do the holy work of bringing justice and hope and compassion into the world. Are you ready? Yeah. Story number one. Most of you know that a mighty crew of people, and you are invited to join that crew, from Glide, in the kitchen, and from all over the planet, descend into the basement of this building every Friday morning to bake 22 loaves of challah. You guys want to try a little Hebrew? Challah, go for it. Down here, challah, right? On a side note, please say a prayer for our industrial mixer. It's on its last leg. If you got any connections to a 40-quart or a 60-quart Hobart mixer, call this rabbi. When we are done baking, we walk those hot loaves to every floor of the building. Sula, exactly, they're good. Come on Friday, I'll give you some. And share some hot Sabbath bread with all of Glide's employees. Not only does the building smell like heaven, these challahs really make people happy. Just ask around. When we were done distributing challahs last week, I ran into this guy. Anyone recognize him? Anyone? What's that? The fish man! Giuseppe Panisi, right? That's Giuseppe Panisi, who owns Pioneer Seafood. You ready for this? If you don't know who the fish man is, just put your seatbelts on. Every week or two, Giuseppe and his partner Jolene bring 1,000 pounds of fresh fish from their boat to Glide. Employees cart that fish to the basement, where an army of Asian bubbies clean and fillet that fish, which is later fried and served on Fresh Fish Fridays. The dude donates 1,000 pounds of fish to Glide almost every week. What's the market rate for 1,000 pounds of fish these days? I got no idea, but it's not cheap. I brought Giuseppe and Jolene to join the challah team in our weekly end of week challah ritual. There we were, 5 Jews from the kitchen, 4 Glide staff employees, a 3rd generation industrial fisherman, and a rabbi who gets seasick when he drives across the Golden Gate Bridge. All packed into a windowless storage room in the Glide basement. I looked around the circle at these righteous and diverse crew, invited them to take a slow, deep breath. Then everyone shared their name, one thing they wanted to let go of from the week that has just closed, and their favorite type of bread in the world. When we were all done sharing, we said a blessing over the bread. We each tore off a piece, and Sanford unwrapped the salted European butter that he brings in for us. I strongly encourage people to smear their challah with a lot more butter than they think they deserved. Smiles filled the room. palates were pleased. Hot bread had been shared. Each of us in that room felt connected and immensely blessed to be a part of Glide's holy justice machinery. Later that afternoon, Giuseppe texted me some photos from his boat, and he wrote, "We had a lot of fun at the shipyard after we left Glide. We shared fish with our friends there. God has a lot of souls to feed," he said. "At least we can help feed a few tummies." Story number 2. Most of you know that Glide and the Kitchen brought 85 people on pilgrimage to Alabama a few months ago. So we're taking sign-ups for next year, let me know. We went to the opening of the Equal Justice Initiative's Legacy Museum, which covers the story from slavery to mass incarceration today, and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, which searingly tells the story of the 4,400 known victims of lynching in America. When we were on the ground in Alabama, a small group of the Glide leadership team was invited to an early morning opening prayer service at the lynching memorial. As the sun was rising over the horizon, we stood in the center of the memorial, directly underneath the steel boxes which dangled from the ceiling, each bearing the name of a county and the names and dates of people who were lynched in those counties. Sweet Honey in the Rock sang. Brian Stevenson told the history of the memorial and the museum. And the Reverend Jesse Jackson offered up a prayer. Needless to say, it was a profoundly holy gathering. When it was over, I brought my daughters up to meet Reverend Jackson. "Reverend Jackson, I'm Michael Lezak. I'm a rabbi. I work at Glide in San Francisco." Upon hearing this, he said, "Please give my warmest regards to Cecil and tell him that I miss him." I looked at my daughters. We smiled and promised to pass the word along. Then Reverend Jackson looked me square in the eye and he said, "Rabbi, don't you ever forget that they did this to your people too. Don't ever forget about Leo Frank, the 31-year-old Jewish man who was kidnapped by a group of armed white supremacists and lynched in Marietta, Georgia in 1915. I'll be honest with you, I'd totally forgotten the story of Leo Frank. I had to look his story up later that day. There we were, at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, standing underneath hundreds of steel boxes bearing the names of thousands of African Americans who were lynched. Along the walls were plaques that told the stories of why the men and women were lynched. For throwing stones, for slander, for dating or supposedly dating a white woman, for trying to vote. These boxes were dangling above our heads, not unlike the bodies of lynched African Americans that were hung from trees. And there was the Reverend Jesse Jackson, an iconic civil rights leader, schooling this rabbi and his daughters about the connections between racial terror lynching inflicted on African Americans and violent acts of anti-Semitism here in America. I was profoundly moved by Reverend Jackson's ability to take this time and place that was deeply focused on African American history and to hold all of that very clearly, and to simultaneously broaden the lens to see direct connections between the violence perpetrated upon his people to the violence perpetrated upon my people. Reverend Jackson's linking of his history to my history felt like a very Glide-like move. He consciously reminded me that his people's pain and history was intimately intertwined with my people's pain and history. This was not an us versus them time or place. Ultimately, that memorial and that museum, I love you. Right? And this mighty and righteous Glide home of ours are here to remind us over and over again, meal by meal, program by program, Sunday celebration by Sunday celebration, that our differences don't make us weaker. They only serve to make us stronger and more fiercely connected, because ultimately, isn't it true that we are all in this together? That we are all in this together. That we are all in this together. Thank you. I want to remind you, if what you felt here this morning moved you, if this music made its way into your soul, if this Glide vision is a vision you support and feel like the world needs Glide to be strong, I want to encourage you to support us, to become a part of this community. There will be an awesome crew of people right through those doors in room 201, the Maya Angelou room, right after services. During this time of transition, we need your support more than ever. Glide continues to hold on to the values that we all treasure. I invite you to stand and get in close. Reggie, come on in close. Vernon, come on in. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. It is such a gift for all of us, this gorgeous and righteous and healing slice of humanity, to gather together as brothers and sisters and everyone in between. May you be profoundly blessed as you go on your way. May you have a beautiful, justice and compassion-filled week. Amen.
We'll stand and sing, "We Shall Overcome."